Hey, random stranger, how are you going? I hope life has been going good for you and that you are ready to finish off Girls' Last Tour today. Of the animes that I've reacted to so far, Girls' Last Tour has been the one that has made me reflect on a more personal level what I think about life and how one goes about it, including how to deal with the omnipresence of death. And that sounds really depressing. Like, oh my gosh, this show is constantly making us think about and worry about these big existential questions. But actually, watching this show has been quite the opposite an experience for me. It's been this meandering, really laid back musing over things as we travel with Chi and Yu through these different landscapes. And I love how it always takes something simple or seemingly straightforward, like a potato or the rain or music, and just turning that thing over and over and looking at it from a different perspective. So yeah, given that this is the last reaction, I just wanted to say that it's been a really wonderful experience just chilling with these girls and also seeing from you guys how different people think about the things that they come across and that they talk about. Last time I asked why fish are so prominent in this story, and so I did what Black Rose's Thorn suggested, and I went over and checked out Tsukumizu's Twitter account, and I saw like fish in weird shapes and dead fish and also lots of fruits and veggies. So basically I'm no closer to solving that mystery of what the fish means, but I suppose because fish is such a universal, extremely flexible symbol that it can be used to symbolize all manner of things in life and in death. It can also be related to the I can't speak, the ichthys fish, or what a lot of people would call the Jesus fish, which was used by really early Christians to symbolize death and resurrection. So that cycle of death and then life and rebirth is obviously a huge theme that we keep returning to in Girls' Last Tour, not least in the last two episodes. And there were some really great comments about those episodes. So let's get to the recap and get to those. Episode 9 has the girls driving through yet another dark facility. And unlike other areas they've traveled through, though, things are happening here, almost as if the facility itself is alive. And she, at the beginning, is really quick to clarify that she doesn't mean that it's alive in the sense of being a life form, but only that the machines are still working, which of course sets up the rest of the episode really well, because then you get that nice blurring of the line between what is alive and what is not. And when the girls come across the machines that can actually talk to you and respond and reason and most importantly empathize, that line increasingly becomes less and less clear. By normal standards, I think that the machines that Chi and Yu talk to would be considered a form of general or strong artificial intelligence, as opposed to weak artificial intelligence, which is designed only to solve certain discrete problems and aren't capable of general cognitive functions, or what we would call having a mind of their own. So just to go on a bit about that general versus weak AI thing a bit more, what I find most interesting about that area of research is the volume of work out there that is debating not just the technological possibilities of building general AI, but also the ethical dilemmas around whether we should even build machines that can feel things and reflect on those feelings. Because as soon as you create something that resembles an emotional or an awakened consciousness, you sort of open up this can of worms around what rights they then take on by virtue of having a level of sentience, and then how the rights of empathetic machines interact with the broader, more generally accepted set of basic human rights. But anyway, that is not a conversation that we will have today. I guess the point is it was really cool for this episode to start digging into where those lines blur between machine life and then life form life. And by the end of that episode, she's thinking that the facility machines are equivalent to the Kettenkrad in that they're not alive because they can't think for themselves. That changes dramatically by the end of the episode after they actually meet that first machine and talk to it and then learn its stories. Actually, she is proven wrong a lot in this episode because she also said there were no other living beings aside from humans, and then the next second they come face to face with the first ever live fish that they have ever seen. I want to read a comment from Dolgun Murun, which sort of made me rethink how we use the word alive to describe a really wide range of things. So I love the beginning of episode 9, the ventilation, mechanisms, and everything else almost sounding like something breathing. It gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. Another thing I love about this episode is the idea that the city was alive once, but like everything else, it eventually ended after it suffered enough damage to the point that it couldn't repair itself. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but it sort of gives me the vibe that nature can exist in any form. Sure, humanity split from the earth, but in doing so, we made our own ecosystem, and that eventually presumably led to entirely new forms of life that could exist in places with concrete and metal instead of soil and greenery. Sort of like the cat, Nuko, which we meet in the next episode. But anyway, let's keep going. This is actually one of my favorite tropes. Something artificial becoming natural, the blurring of lines between what is man-made and what is the product of chaos. Yeah, those were fantastic points. I'd kind of forgotten that we do speak of cities as being alive, that although they're not blood and flesh life forms, cities are made up of entire ecosystems of industry and transport and business that makes it all feel alive. Cities also tend to have a unique DNA about them, so much so that, say, for example, you arrive in London or Hong Kong or New York, you can tell by the smells and the local vibes of the place which city you're in, which is actually quite amazing. The blurring of what's artificial and natural is also super interesting to think about. If you've ever played Horizon Zero Dawn, that is exactly the kind of blurring of the lines that entire world is set in. So it plays on this idea that technology and nature don't necessarily have to be opposing forces. You know, new technologies can come about in organic ways and vice versa. Natural processes can arise from man-made environments. And so we automatically think of nature as being anything that's not man-made. But because humans themselves are organisms that arose as part of the natural order, the technologies that we create in a way could also be considered part of that natural order. In the cycling through of those flashbacks of the dripping water and the button and the snow and the screw vibrating on top of that pipe, and there was also like a spinning fan and engines and stuff, there was a related parallel between the different kinds of life forms that Texaboos pointed out. So they wrote, I got a vague circle of life connection, with numerous items being round or revolving, the water being the sustenance of life, the flow of life, and the ripples and impact of your life to others. The engine supplying power, aka life for the machines, and the loose screws I interpreted as destruction or erosion of nature, although I might be stretching here. Yeah, I really dig the idea of all those things pointing to the circle of life, especially with the comparison between how water sustains life and then how generated energy sustains the machines that were built to sustain life, even long after the humans themselves have disappeared. And I guess it's just another way to reflect on the blurring of those lines between what is natural and what is an artificial form of life. So as I said before, you know, one can lead to the other and vice versa. In episode 9, we also get a version of what happened to humans from the machine, which said humans chose to separate themselves from the Earth's processes, that they built cities to replace the natural cycles of water, air, and energy. And presumably this separation contributed to the collapse of human civilization, if not directly, in that humans ran out of the ability to produce enough water and clean air and energy. Maybe indirectly, in that the scarcity of those resources that are so critical to sustaining life led to full-scale war, and then the mutual wiping out of most humans in existence. So Nightingale had an interesting comment about this. So they wrote, episode 9 made me think more about how humankind has diverged from the natural cycle of things. The world shown here is a bleak one that shows how humanity is capable of unbelievable levels of destruction. But I feel like you and Chi are counter to that, showing that we are also capable of empathy towards other creatures and non-creatures that wouldn't strictly contribute to one's survival in a post-apocalyptic environment. I also found the ending shot a bit sad. You and Chi walk off screen, then followed by the fish. Walking off screen to the right normally indicates moving towards the future, but the robot remains stuck in an eternal present. It had only one purpose, and at some point that purpose will be gone and it will be left with nothing. First of all, I hadn't thought about how that last ending shot was framed, and thank you for pointing it out to me, because it is sad that the robot is destined to remain behind and continue to maintain the facility for as long as reasonably possible, even if no humans are around to, I guess, benefit from the maintenance. And I think the solemnity of that ending tied in really well with the very deliberate decision not to play that very sweet and happy sounding ending song for once. I also wholeheartedly agree with your reading of Chi and Yu as being counter to humanity's appetite for destruction. You know, it's something I've noticed more and more every time I rewatch the episodes, that when Chi and Yu aren't busy trying to survive or worrying about survival, they do and they say things that are almost glimpses of tiny kernels of the good and the wholesome parts of being human or human civilization. For example, they empathize with and they help other living beings, like you mentioned. They wonder about life and the world, like the stupidity of war, or in this episode, like the rotation of the earth and the relative speed at which things move. They also rediscover singing and reflect on how music can make people feel different emotions, which leads to this bigger conversation about what makes people happy. And in real life, I feel like the moment humans started thinking about things beyond survival was when civilization came into being and how we progressed, right? Like the conventional historical story goes that humans started living in more permanent settlements, which resulted in surpluses of food, which then allowed for people to specialize in different roles, including priests who developed religions that gave people hope, and philosophers too, or what we would later call scientists, who thought about the world and our place in it. So there's definitely the sense that given the chance, you know, Chi and Yu could single-handedly restart human civilization. But given the nature of this story, they probably will never get that chance before they die. But honestly, it doesn't matter, you know, it really doesn't matter how their story ends. I feel like the point really is that where there are humans, even if they are forced to live in a world that has gone through multiple rounds of destruction, there will always be this capacity to empathize and connect and reason and to create. And I say multiple rounds of destruction because in episode 10, Chi deduces, based on the place where they find that massive hole, that with the weapons scattered around everywhere, that there were multiple big battles fought, one after the other. So people kept fighting and then rebuilding and then fighting again, which is just humans being humans, right? But also the message is still there, that Chi and Yu represent, which is that humans are also capable of so much good. There was another great comment from Pyrame about the cyclical relationship between humanity and nature. So, as the robot said, humanity stepped away from the cycle of nature, but from what we saw so far, we can also say that this humanity started to control nature, at least a part of it, and imitated it. This control over nature can be seen through three things. First, the absence of nature, so it doesn't bother the construction. We can also consider this absence as the moving away from nature part. Then the potato. As we saw, this potato seems to have been modified. It looks like a ration and seems to not need to grow underground. It's been modified so it can be eaten more directly. We also saw how this civilization seems to have imitated nature, as you noticed with the forest of metal beams in a previous episode, but also with the metal vegetation in the temple and the robots that look like quadrupedal animals. We can also say that by giving them empathy, humanity in a certain way created life. It's like everything the humans did was to cut out nature or to make nature more efficient for the sake of more productivity and to sustain even more life. But in doing so, humans ended up taking charge of nature, as you said, and then somehow this led to their downfall. So maybe the controlling of nature went too far and caused ecological breakdown, which then led to the large-scale destruction, either through war and or a breakdown of infrastructure that human cities then couldn't recover from. Just like the machine said, if there's no reconstruction after massive deconstruction, then that's where it all ends. So similar to in our world, like the way we use science and technology to control and conquer our environment and also generate energy from it. So things like building dams and mining and industrial farming, like all of these things can be good and lead to increased quality of life. But if done in a rampant way that disregards our collective impact on the natural ecosystems that we rely on to survive, it can also lead to a situation where the more we try to control our environment, the more it breaks down and becomes damaged, which then leads to the cycle of humans having to exert even more energy to reclaim control over it until this breaking point arrives, right? Which is what I think the robot was alluding to, that there comes a point where you can't sustain life anymore and everything either slowly or incredibly quickly spirals into total collapse. I guess also the point about humans imitating nature was also really intriguing, because you're right, like even just the way that the robots were designed to resemble animals was a deliberate choice, as was their programming into the code, the machine's capacity for empathy. I quite like the idea that it was some human's act of creating life or restoring some nature-inspired creation back to an environment that had already been completely ruined beyond recovery because of human interference. As is the case with every episode, we also got to see some stark differences between Chi and Yu and how they respond to certain events. So while Chi was learning about how humans separated themselves from nature, from the machine, Yu was just having a grand old time swimming in the tank and not really caring about this entire conversation about humanity and the consequences of its choices. The way they approached swimming is also super reflective of their different personalities. So Chi is embarrassed to be naked and is grabbing really tightly onto the edge because she's scared that her feet don't touch the floor, whereas Yu just lets things happen. You know, she sinks to the bottom at first, but she didn't stress about it and just sort of let her instincts just take over. And it's ironic, right, that Yu has mastered the philosophy of if you let things go, it'll come to you, which is not really something that Chi naturally takes to. One small thing about episode 9 that I really loved was how when the machine is feeding the pellets to the fish, you also have Yu and Chi sitting next to it, eating their rations, sort of drawing this parallel between the girls and the fish. And I think I talked a bit last time about how the fish can be read as a symbol for Chi and Yu. So not only does the fish follow Chi and Yu at the end as they exit stage right, which Nightingale brought up, but they're all survivors against very stacked odds. and they are also subject to the constraints of food and supplies. Yet they're also emblematic of the ability for life to flourish even in this kind of bare, punishing environment. And maybe that is why Yu feels like she wants to save the fish. She feels some kind of connection to it, even though, the machine comments that they won't benefit at all in any way by saving the fish. However, there was that moment in episode 10 in the next episode where Yu reiterates that she wishes she had eaten that fish. And when she reminds her of the effort that she made to save it, Yu says, well, that was then, this is different, which made me think of all those stories of how enemies on opposite sides of a war would share food one day and then just go right back to killing each other the next. Like in World War II, I think it was, when the Germans and the Allies celebrated Christmas together, and then the next day, or I think in New Year's or something, they started just right back to murdering each other. Episode 10 also featured machines, except not so much the alive and sentient type, but more in the form of a massive empty train, which appears to have used to be used to transport the machines, because inside of the train there are all of these corpses of the robots, which makes it feel like Chi and Yu are riding inside this giant moving graveyard. Again, very symbolic of how every human is on this inexorable journey towards death, and how sometimes in life we can feel what Yu was feeling during that incredibly extended moment of silence when she's just looking around everywhere and is super bored. I also really liked in this episode how the dialogue was written in a way that really lightly touched on some super deep topics, but then the girls would just casually move on to the next thing and don't really dwell too much about it. So you're left with this strange feeling that you're being given little morsels of really deep thoughts to do with as you want. You can either pick them up and just leave them, or you can choose to dive into that rabbit hole of reflection if you choose to. And an example would be when they discovered the clock on the body of the larger dead robots, and the girls talk about how time passes and wonder whether time has a speed at which it goes past. And that scene was coded in such thick irony because they're examining a dead robot, and death in one sense is the passing of time. The older we get, the closer to death we get, and people often talk about how time has passed by so quickly. And then in the next shot, we see Chi being like, okay, let's move on now, and driving past the dead robot for whom time has run out. And Yu says, oh, but wait, there's no reason for us to hurry, which I felt like encompassed a double meaning. They don't have to hurry, one, because the train is moving them along, but also as young people, they ostensibly have more time before death comes for them. And usually when you're young, you don't really feel the same sense of life or of time running out compared to when you get older. However, what Chi says next about how their time is also constrained by the food that they have really brings it back to reality and their situation of survival, because you can only stave off death if you have food to live off of. And so I love how in such a few seemingly really simple lines of dialogue, they could pack so much meaning about life and time and death into them. The other part of the episode that really left an impression over me was when they reached the top of the structure, luckily without dying, and looking out over that red sunset. There is a lot of literature around, or a lot of lore about red skies. They are talked about in the Bible and in some of Shakespeare's plays, and the essence of it is that red skies that occur in the mornings are bad because they foretell bad weather and bad omens, whereas red skies that occur late in the day or at night are good because it means that you'll have good weather or good luck the next day. And I didn't know this, but it also works scientifically as well. So when you see a red sunset, it means that the sun's light is cutting through a high concentration of dust particles. which usually points to high atmospheric pressure, which in turn indicates that good weather and clear skies are coming. So for Chi and Yu to catch a red sunset is a really fortuitous omen, though like with so many things in Girls Last Tour, it's like a mixed feelings kind of scene because the music that's playing as well while they're watching the sunset is quite sad. But I think by now we're used to the show presenting scenes to us that invoke this sense of mixed feelings, right? Like they invoke the beauty of sad things. One last thing, Nuclear Snake wrote about the symbolic significance of the spiral, which I have been thinking about as I've been watching this show. So in relation to this show in particular, I'd say it's definitely connected to the cycle of life, of all things, not just people, but also, and perhaps more to the point, spirals are representative of journeys and letting go. Kind of like the phrase a downward spiral. You can use spiral imagery to evoke the fact that the girls are going on a journey without really having a destination and basically just going with the flow, wherever that might take them, while learning about themselves and the world around them and experiencing growth because of it. Yeah, that was awesome because I'd not thought about the spirals symbolizing the inner growth that takes place as you continue on in your life journey. So like you said, like a life journey doesn't have a defined destination or an end. Like you never know how you'll change as a person as you encounter different things in life. Hopefully you grow better as a person, but that's not always guaranteed. But there is certainly for every human a definitive end in the form of death. And just like that Raindrop song had a line in there about the end of our unending journey, the spirals and also Girls Last Tour as a whole has been so adept at highlighting the contrast and the tension between the endless exploration and growth in knowledge and experience of humans, but also their eventual mortality. Alright guys, let's dig into these last two episodes of Girls Last Tour. As far as I know, there hasn't been a second season that's been announced, but I'm also aware that the manga itself goes much further into the story. So if you guys think it'd be a good idea to maybe do a reading and a reaction of the manga, let me know in the comments down below because I think I am keen to do that eventually. But yeah, in the meantime, let's just get to episode 11. If you guys are good to go, let's do this in 3, 2, 1, play. Oh, no, what did you feed it, you? Poor thing. I mean, who knows? I mean, it evolved in an environment that's all steel and, you know, ruins, right? Man-made ruins. So maybe it does subsist on a diet of the same kind of things, metals and steel. But come on, you. Again, the lyrics of this OP will never fail to amaze me at how optimistic and happy they are. It's all about moving ahead, learning new things, not being lonely ever again. I love these two. I can't believe in the first episode I thought that you were serious about blasting Chi in the head over a ration bar. Or I think it was a piece of chocolate or something, I don't remember. I mean, at the time it was really hard to tell. But you know these two are really close. It's like evolved arms. Is it actually evolving into a cat? Oh. Oh, it was the bullet in its throat. What? How did it know to say that though? I thought it just repeats the words it hears. Maybe it does have its own mind. Oh, okay. I see. She knows her stuff. It kind of feels like an AI itself, like it, because it kind of learns things and evolves as it learns. It's even taking on the characteristics of you, which is quite scary. It is kind of cool though. It's like tools that were used in killing other humans is now being used to feed something, sustain life. More holes in buildings. For a second, I thought it was War and Peace. Oh, she's so happy. She can't read English. Yeah, that's definitely English. That is a massive missile. That's why this relationship works. One of them grabs the bullets and the missiles, and the other one grabs the books. No. I do not have a great feeling about this constant feeding of bullets to this innocent creature. Okay, so it's March now. They're still going up. It's like they're still trying to travel to as high a level as possible. And that's why they're the hope for humanity, I guess. What? Oh, oh. Oh, it looks like some kind of weird satellite instrument. I wonder if. So, if they have satellites, there are definitely it was a civilization that got to space exploration, right? Maybe there are other civilizations not on Earth. It is far enough into the future. It's the same song. Oh god, that's just such a hard cut. I do wonder if that song is actually happening live and someone is broadcasting it live, or if it's just some kind of dead radio wave that's been put in perpetuity on the radio waves. What are those signs? That is true. They have had lots of things fall down on them. Here we go. Another loose screw. Oh, that is. Oh no. Destruction. Oh, that looked like a robot for a second. Like a giant mech. It also made the same noise that the other robot did when just before Chi and Yu destroyed it. It was a robot. Yo. But it's in human form, not the four-legged ones. Oh, they have seen them before. I wonder why they made certain robots in human form and then certain robots in four-legged animal form. Also, it's weird that they translate Nuko into cut. Maybe because cat, but not quite cat. Oh no, you and a giant mech. This is not good. God. Oh no. Please don't have killed anyone. No. Oh no. Okay. They almost destroyed themselves. Well, isn't that just the perfect metaphor for how humans destroy themselves by waging war against each other? It always comes back to bite you in the ass. I wonder if they're having flashbacks to when they were really young, when they were sent off. She's laughing. That is so scary. Oh my god. That maniacal laughter against this backdrop. I know she doesn't know what she's laughing at, but that was pretty scary. That was a real punch. Yeah, imagine an army of these machines. Hmm. And I guess the systems that created the need for humans to create this thing. Ugh. Did you teach it that too? That doesn't sound like you would say something you would say. Wait, that was another explosion? Oh. Man, even if they were the only two humans to exist, they can still die by the stuff that humans made. Oh. Nico is a god. Well, there used to be lots of these things that people worshipped. Oh no. It's another thing it shares with machines. If they have to. Face. I don't know if, yeah, if they want to eat something that lives off gunpowder and fuel. What is that? Like a wind farm? Yeah. Wow. Again, just like another really manufactured thing that imitates an actual forest. Good question. Are we really gonna get to the point of cannibalism? Because she would be on the bottom? Yeah. Hmm. It's close, but not really. That is an insane wind farm. Imagine all of that power that that would have generated. But also, like, if you ruin the landscape enough and you don't get the wind that you need, it's kind of just a dead forest. Oh, this again. Hmm. That's what I feel like all the time. There's too many books to read. That's nuts. And it's all built on like the top of a building. Yo, a submarine. Wait, how is it just snowing here? It must be stocked full of food though and fuel. Oh my god, it is literally a machine that's been turned into organic form. It's still got power. This is very hopeful music for being inside like a war submarine. Ooh, that's nuclear sign. Interesting. I feel like it's not often that we get a continuation of to the next episode. I feel like this is the first time. Oh, things are getting so interesting just as we're getting to the last episode. Really interesting parallel between Nico and the religious structures that they've encountered along the way. It is literally an exact replica of Nico, except like a bigger version of it. I find that really interesting because Nico, we can accept that they did somehow evolve from a machine, just in a different form, especially with the way that it opened the submarine entrance with like a screw kind of arm. And we know that humans used to worship those images, or at least put their religious faith in those images. So, in a way, is it saying that humans worshipped the machines that they created? And in doing so, I guess they got to the point where that worship of man-made machines led to their destruction, maybe. Okay, I don't know. Let's go to the next episode. Okay, guys, this is it. We discover whether Nuko will grow into a massive god of war and basically devour Chi and Yu after having its fill of bullets and gunpowder. We shall see if that happens or not. Hopefully it doesn't. If you guys are good, let's do this in 3, 2, 1, play. At least they left the exit open. It's not a great sign. Oh no, we don't get the opening song. Maybe they'll find films, like film clips about the past. Again, with those loose screws just falling off random places. I think there was something to that theory about how they might be indicating a collapse of civilization. Or like an unraveling of nature, you know. Bunk beds. I'm surprised she still remembers. No, they only need each other. Real chocolate. Rehash of the episode 1. Circular logic, but okay. No guns involved this time. I don't know, we'll see. Maybe when they get to the last bar. High calorie. Yeah, you only really have the memories of them, I guess. Yo, Wi-Fi? No way. Oh no, communication with like an alien civilization or someone else. Oh, okay. I was like, oh crap, someone's been watching them. Okay, no, it's just uploading their photos. Oh, there's Nuko's peoples. There's Ishi. It's the camera before that it fell into their hands. Yeah. Oh man, that means she must have died. It's connected to the network. Oh my god. Peoples. Oh no, it's the beginnings of the AI program. It's so tiny. This is way before they developed sentience. Hmm. It kind of takes on a life of its own, right? If you set AI on a certain path. Oh, was that a Greek statue? Oh my gosh, that's like. Oh, music. I saw the conductor. And then something like a ball of fire. Oh my god. It was a graveyard, a literal graveyard. Idols. Ugh, politics. Perfect piece of classical music for this. The hippies? Oh my god, that was the ruins in the back. Wait, Japan declared war? Look at all those fish. fries. Oh shit. Is that like a mutant spider consuming a mutant butterfly? Oh man. They're so small. Oh no, 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 no. Oh. Whoa. Oh, no. Oh shit. Wait, but it doesn't digest things, right? She can still get you out. Oh shit. Oh my gosh, Chi, you haven't ever shot a rifle in your life. Maybe eventually it would have. Why is it shaking like that? They should be all connected, right? This background music is intense with that heartbeat underlying it. She's so scared. Oh god. Oh my god. She wouldn't have a reason to keep going. She would die, literally. You're gonna be standing right there. Did she fight her way out? Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, it was the singer too. Ooh. What? Oh. Oh, so they need the energy to keep surviving? Obviously, they live off fuel and stuff. So this is just an extension of the machines. Oh. Oh, so they're sort of like anti-missile machines? Okay, Nico just discovered its life's purpose. Yo, giant fungi people. Oh no, what about Ishii and Kanazawa? That's right, they see everything everywhere. Oh, it's gotta help dismantle all the weapons, all the shit that humans made. with them still in it. I oh my god. The world is ending, but it's okay. Because they consumed all the energy, and so without all that energy, and when they left, there's nothing left in the cities to keep it going. All those machines would be dead too. But what are they gonna do? Deja vu. Don't know. Oh, okay, it's still gonna aim for the upper levels. It doesn't matter. Ugh, the fish, the spiraling up. Oh, she's doing that thing again. Except... ah, they'll go wherever the wind blows. I love how they're embedding all of these references to past episodes in this last one. Maybe they can find some more alcohol. Oh, and they didn't end with the traditional ending song. It's just both of their voices. With the rain song. Yep, end of our unending journey. I love how it ends with just them two. That realization that even though it'll be just the two of them forevermore, it's okay. Because that's all they really need. Oh, that is such a positive message to end on. Which really makes me wonder how the manga finishes. Whether it ends on that similar high note Yes, they're gonna die, and yes, the cities are shutting down because there's no more energy left, but you can't help but feel like they are gonna be just fine with each other as long as they have each other. Oh my god, these two episodes. I mean, I was laughing, I was in shock, and also I feel like this season ended, thankfully, on a really high, hopeful note, though still remaining true to this show's core message of the world is ending, but it's gonna be okay. But let's talk about episode 11 first. So, Ep 11 continued that tradition of small, very casual conversations having much bigger implications for the meaning of life and death and war. Nuko, for example, you can read either not much at all or a lot into how you kept feeding Nuko bullets. And it's cute and silly, and obviously it led to some much bigger implications in the next episode. But also because of the connection that Chi made in that episode between Nuko and the religious statues that they've seen before, and also the machine-like qualities of Nuko and how it feeds on a diet of gunpowder and bullets. It's a quite in-your-face symbolism of how humans nurtured machines that then grew to be capable of massively destructive capabilities. Like that mech that you accidentally activated and turned the entire landscape into hellfire. And then I guess how humans maybe eventually came to worship or to prioritize above all else those machines, and that's likely how they wiped themselves out. Yeah, it's sort of just like, at least before we discovered what exactly those worm-like things were, Nuko seemed to be this innocent little thing, but it's consuming more and more gunpowder and bigger bullets. So just like that, humans thought that they were just starting a war here and there, but war is a ravenous thing, and the more you feed it, the more you have to sacrifice to it. I also wondered if that book that she found called was War and Human Civilization, if that contained secrets about Nuko or the species that they eventually came across in the next episode, that related, the history of war and how it wiped out civilization. But unfortunately, neither of the girls could read it. Although I guess they kind of didn't need to, because in episode 12, we get an idea of what led to the eventual destruction of the human race through the videos and the images. But yeah, we'll get to that later. In episode 11, there was also some great conversation around how maybe wars were started because people were afraid of things or cultures that they didn't understand. And again, we get glimpses of how the girls counter this type of destructive thinking, especially Yu, who points out that Chi, despite being a scaredy cat, loves learning about things she doesn't understand from books. And also when they both decide to follow the sound of that radio, they both are quite clear that they want to discover and learn things that they don't yet understand. So that attitude of stepping outside of your comfort zone and taking the time to really get to know a foreign culture or someone who you don't immediately understand or agree with, that is so valuable. And hopefully we, and when I say we, I mean humans in the real world, don't have to wait until we've destroyed all of civilization to really practice that sort of attitude. The other ironic thing about that episode was the discussion about helmets, and initially how the girls are like, wait, why do we need these helmets again? They originally were created to protect people from flying bullets, and yet there are no people left to shoot at us. But of course, just because humans no longer exist doesn't then mean that the danger they left behind in the form of their weapons and the things they used to kill each other, it doesn't mean that that danger has passed. And I guess that goes to emphasize that the consequences of war and the lethal capacity to level entire human civilizations doesn't immediately disappear after the humans who created those very systems and weapons are long gone. Similar to previous episodes where, the robots were left behind to maintain this crumbling facility even though there are no more humans left, the weapons of war remain very much active even after all the humans who operated that machinery are gone. And that's something that has held true in real life as well, unfortunately. You know, you hear stories about demining operations, for example, that had to continue long after, you know, the Vietnam War and other wars had finished, because the mines that were laid by enemy forces continued to haunt and to hurt local populations, you know, decades after those wars. And it's not really humanity's strong point to include in their cost benefit analyses of whether or not to go to war, to include the longevity of not just the material and the blood costs of war, but also the psychological damage to a population who has to live with the consequences of war long after the actual war has finished. The last episode, episode 12, I mean, fungi machine people, I can't believe I'm even uttering those words, but there they are. But first, I want to just sort of sit back and reflect on how this was the first episode ever where I felt absolutely crushed for the girls, or felt like their lives were truly threatened by something seriously scary. In the past, you know, they've had buildings collapse on them, or they've gotten lost, but they've always had each other, and or the people that they've come across have always turned out to be really nice, empathetic beings. So when you was taken by that worm fungi thing and seeing Chi go to pieces because of that, as well as all the really well used flashbacks to remind us just how much Chi and you are codependent on each other, that whole sequence was absolutely devastating. Did I expect you to be perfectly fine after that? Not at all. Like, had that been the end of you, it would have been completely in line with everything that we have ever talked about and discussed after each episode of Girls Last Tour. The fact that death comes to everyone and you never know when or how it'll come. You can't control the nature of your death, nor is having a companion a normal thing in this world. And also we did discover that sad fact later that actually, you know, these two girls are really the only two human beings left, at least in this city. I'm not sure if they meant the entire world, but in this city, which includes Ishii and Kanazawa. So I think it's safe to assume that those two have died, which again, even more reason to feel like it was such a gift that you was fine in the end, that it turned out that those fungi people machines only consumed devices and things with energy in them, because that outcome was never assured and nothing in the story ever suggested that we would end up with a relatively happy ending. So the fact that Chi and you were reunited, and they also verbalized how much they meant to each other, that even if the world is coming to an end, it's going to be all fine because they have each other. I didn't need anything else from this show for the ending. I'm so happy that they got to be together. Those two just, you know, with their Kettenkrad and just doing their thing. The video clips that the girls were able to retrieve from the camera were a treasure trove of lore. Obviously, they didn't contain detailed answers of exactly why humans disappeared off the face of the earth, but it was things that we probably already gleaned from the ruins that the girls have visited and sort of things that they learnt from machines. You can basically boil it down to humans humaning. So you see politicians fighting and then countries declaring war on each other, and then the scale of destruction that follows afterwards is huge. But also interweaved with those different clips of shitty human things are clips of people just living out their lives and celebrating the good things and the huge milestones that do happen, like sports or the birth of a baby and friendship. It's that constant discord or disconnect between how humans are capable of these really amazing things and also these really shitty, destructive, murderous things. I was also trying to find a connection between Kanazawa and the girl who was in the photo with him. I thought maybe she might have been a grown-up version of the little girl who was explaining the function of the earlier prototype of that other machine, but I'm not quite sure. The other thing I'd say about that scene is the great use of Chopin's Nocturne in E flat major, which is like a super famous classical piece, but also the way it's structured really fit that scene. So it starts with a relatively simple melody, but it gradually builds in these chromatic tones that create a much greater sense of tension or a sense of longing and this need to reach a certain destination almost, which of course fits right in with Chi and Yu's journey, in that the more things they discover about the world around them and also discover about each other, the more they want to continue on this journey together with each other, and to continue traveling upwards to that place where they may or may not, who knows, find more answers. Okay, so the fungi people machines who are all networked together and have eyes all over the city, my understanding is that they were created or they evolved into beings that consume the volatile energy that is still contained in all of the technologies, especially all the weapons left behind by human beings. That once their job of absorbing all of that energy is done, they will go into hibernation, and as a result, the cities will completely shut down because all of their energy would have been drained away. And yes, so the reason that the city will die, or as the mushroom lady put it, the earth will go into slumber again, or the world will end, is because all the infrastructure that still exists has relied on this energy to maintain itself. And I'm not 100% sure why they equated the energy contained in all of the weapons to the energy that keeps the facilities up and running. But it seemed like the broader message was these mushroom machines who seem to have evolved from, some kind of anti-missile technology, except they're the sentient versions of that. They represent a wiping clean or wiping away of all of the destructive energy of war. To reset the world, they have to first get rid of everything that previous civilizations relied on to build their cities, and also in the same process wipe each other out. So it was really interesting. I found still some hope in what the mushroom lady said, in that they have surveyed everything except for the upper levels, and that was when they told Chi and Yu that they were the only two humans left. So maybe there is still more humans left up in those upper levels that Chi and Yu are finding their way towards, and that there may possibly still be some kind of, I guess, remnant civilization up there. I can't believe it, but that brings us to the end of Girls' Last Tour. I feel like this show is one of those rare ones that digs really deep into the lesson that death allows you to find meaning in life, but it does so in a way that is not overly somber or too heavy to take. With Chi and Yu, well, it's largely because of Chi and Yu. Like, through them, we get insights and thoughts from them as kids, but also as people who don't live in a society, who have never lived in a society. And so we're able to consider deeper questions about the meaning of things like life and war and love and mortality and empathy, separate from any preconceived notions that we are all to some extent socialized with as soon as we're born into this world. Also, the beauty of Girls' Last Tour lies in something that we talked about way back in the beginning, which is that it leans very much into the concept of mono no ware. This show was like an escape into an alternate world where these widely accepted axioms of our world, like death is bad or to be feared, or life should always be inspiring and hopeful, where all of those things don't hold, but it's okay. You know, death is just another part of life. Hopelessness is something that you can get along with or live with. And also, it's okay to forget and be forgotten. I felt like we got to practice this different way of thinking, not just on an intellectual level where you reason out, for example, why death or the impermanence of things can be beautiful, but you also really feel it on an emotional level in a way that's really hard to describe as you're watching the show. And I guess just to sign off, I'm just so grateful that I got to watch this show with you guys, because you clearly know how to appreciate a show that goes at its own slower pace, but is nonetheless so entertaining and so thought-provoking. So thank you again for watching along with me, and I hope you enjoyed this series. Maybe I also hope you'll consider sticking around to watch some more animes with me, because I am starting a couple of new ones this week. But most importantly, I hope you guys take care and have a great rest of the week.